Hope you can see my slide. My slide is visible.
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay. Am I audible properly?
Yes, sir. You are audible, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. The topic of discussion is searchable encryption. I think all of you know search operations on array, databases, documents, etc. For example, we have familiar search problems such as finding an element in an array, given a primary key, search a record in a database or a table, given a keyword, you check whether the keyword is present in a document or not. All these problems are very familiar and you have gone through all these problems. But you know that in all these problems, the search operation will be performed on plain text information or plain text data. But in the searchable encryption, the search operation will be performed over encrypted data. That is the difference. Then, why do you need this searchable encryption? Do you think that the data, whatever you store on cloud, is safe? Can we trust remote storage service providers such as email service providers, which you use every day, like Gmail, Outlook.com, Yahoo Mail, etc.? Storage service providers like Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive, etc. You take your own institutional server. Do you think that your data in your institutional server is safe? The answer is no. Survey report says about 67% of your data, whatever you store in cloud or some servers, are sensitive or your personal data. It also says 53% attacks are insider attacks. Please note that insider attacks are very dangerous compared to external attacks because insiders know everything about you. Insiders know everything about the organization in which you work. So, to protect your data, one of the solutions is searchable encryption. In the searchable encryption, data or your document collection are encrypted and then stored in the cloud. It is the responsibility of the user or the client to encrypt all the documents and then store it in the cloud. Search for any documents containing a keyword in the encrypted data so that cloud server cannot understand or read anything because the data is encrypted. You know, the cloud server cloud service provider himself is a threat or attacker for your data. Yes. So protecting our data or documents from the cloud service provider is also very, very important. In order to search documents or encrypted documents containing a particular keyword, you need to generate a search token first. In the client side, he has to generate a search token first. What is the search token? Search token is the encrypted keyword. Documents containing the encrypted search keyword are returned to the user. Now it is the responsibility of the client to decrypt the returned documents by the cloud service provider. This technology leads to privacy preserving computation, where the privacy of your data is preserved. So I told something about search token. It is the encrypted keyword, isn't it? Searchable encryption enables the users to generate a search token from the search keyword. You know that the data or the set of documents are encrypted and stored in the cloud. In order to search a document containing a particular keyword, the keyword must also be encrypted. This encrypted keyword is called search token, but this search token, in addition to the encrypted keyword, contains other information as well, which will be clearly told after after completing some part of the discussion. With the case study, I will tell you how is the structure of search token. So search token is an encrypted tuple containing the encrypted keyword to search over the encrypted data. And this search token can be generated by only the client or the user who is possessing the secret key. Others cannot generate the search token. Given a token, the cloud server can retrieve the encrypted contents containing the search keyword. This is how the searchable encryption architecture looks like. In the entire architecture, there are mainly 4 entities: data owner, data user, cloud service provider, and key generator. Data owner is responsible to generate the data, encrypt it, and upload into the cloud. Data user requests for the data. In the sense, data user searches the document containing a particular keyword. He has to provide the cloud server an encrypted query containing the encrypted search keyword. You know that encrypted search keyword is nothing but the search token. So data user provides search token to the cloud service provider. Now the cloud service provider will search the documents containing the search token, and if the documents are found containing the search token, are returned to the data user. Now data user can decrypt the documents and use the data. Now key generator is a trusted third party who is responsible to generate the key and distribute it to data owner and data user. This data owner and data user may be the same entities in most of the applications. That depends upon the application. If data owner and data user are different, then they need to share the key. There are some security requirements of searchable encryption. One is the retrieved data. Server is, the cloud server must be unaware of documents and search contents. Search query, server should not learn anything about the keyword being searched for. The search token is generated by the client or the user, and it should not be known to the search query, server. Query generation, the query can be generated by only those users with the relevant secret key. Search query outcome, server should not learn the contents of the search outcome. It has to simply search for the documents containing the search token and return to the user, and server is not allowed to learn contents of the search outcome. Access patterns. Server should not learn about the sequences and frequency of documents accessed by the user. User may provide any number of queries to access the documents, encrypted documents, but how many times user requested the data and in what way, for what document, etc., should not be known to the server. Query patterns. Server should not learn whether 2 tokens were intended for the same query to retrieve the same documents containing the search token. So these are some of the requirements of searchable encryption. Now you might have understood in the entire discussion, you might have concluded that the cloud service provider may not be trustworthy. In order to protect data, especially from the cloud service provider, we use searchable encryption technique. Now, there are 2 design approaches of searchable encryption. One is symmetric searchable encryption and another one is asymmetric searchable encryption. Symmetric searchable encryption is based on symmetric key cryptography, and asymmetric searchable encryption is based on asymmetric or public key cryptography. Now let us say how the symmetric searchable encryption algorithm looks like. It consists of 4 polynomial time algorithms. These are probabilistic polynomial time algorithms. What are these algorithms? First one is keygen of 1 power k. As I told you, keygen is the algorithm or a function run by a key generator whose responsibility is to generate the key and share it among the data owner and data user. The function is keygen of 1 power k, parameter is 1 power k. It inputs a security parameter k and outputs a secret key sk. Please understand that security parameter is different from secret key. It is the parameter is 1 power k in the sense given a value for k, that many number of ones are placed as the parameter. Suppose k is equal to 7, there are 7 ones as the parameter. Second polynomial time algorithm is index gen of sk, f. It takes a secret key sk and a set of files f or set of documents f and generates an index I for f. For the time being, you please understand that an index is nothing but a 2-dimensional table containing at least 2 fields. The first field represents the file ID and the second field represents the keywords present in the corresponding file. Trapdoor of sk, w. In simple terms, a trapdoor function generates the encrypted keyword for search operation. Trapdoor of sk, w contains or takes 2 parameters. One is the secret key sk, which was generated by the algorithm keygen of 1 power k. It takes w, keyword w, and it generates a trapdoor tw for w. This w is present in one or more files of the file set f. Okay. Now, as I told you, in simple terms, a trapdoor tw is nothing but an encrypted keyword. The last function or the algorithm is search operation. Search of I, tw. It is run by the server taking trapdoor tw, which is nothing but encrypted keyword, and the index I. As I told you, index is a 2-dimensional table containing at least 2 fields. First field represents the file ID and the second field represents the keywords present in the corresponding files. So search function takes these 2 parameters, index I and the trapdoor tw, and returns files f of w, all the files where the keyword f is present. Okay, w belongs to f of w belongs to f, where f is the set of files. These are the algorithms defining the asymmetric searchable encryption, which is based on public key encryption technique. This also consists of 4 polynomial time algorithms. One is, as usual, keygen of k. The input is the security parameter k and output is the secret key. It generates 2 keys, public private key pairs. As you know, in the public key encryption technique, 2 keys are used. One is the public key and another one is the private key or secret key. Given a security parameter k, this algorithm keygen of k outputs a security key pair, public secret key pair. You call them APK, that is the public key, and ASK, that is the secret key or private key. Searchable encryption of SC of APK, F takes the public key APK and generates the searchable encryption of the file set F. That means all the files are encrypted using the public key APK. Trapdoor of ASK, W for the secret key ASK and a keyword W generates a trapdoor TW, where TW is the encrypted keyword W, which is used for search operation. Finally, search of E, TW. This takes the searchable encryption E is equal to SC of APK, F, which was already defined, and a trapdoor TW. outputs yes if the search is successful, no otherwise. In the sense, in the set of encrypted files, if the trapdoor or encrypted keyword TW is present, it outputs yes. That means the trapdoor or the keyword is present in one or more documents, otherwise no. In addition to this, it may return the encrypted documents containing the TW trapdoor to the user. Now, our discussion is mainly on symmetric searchable encryption, but we omit asymmetric searchable encryption in this discussion because of the time constraint. In the symmetric searchable encryption scheme, the client performs encryption before storing data. This is already told. I am mainly focusing on symmetric searchable encryption because you know that public key algorithms are slower compared to symmetric key encryption techniques. You know what is meant by a secure index, which is nothing but the index, the term index, what I referred earlier. This is nothing but an auxiliary data structure. As I told you, it is a two-dimensional table that allows the remote server to perform searches efficiently while keeping queries and data confidential. I told you already that a secure index or index is a two-dimensional table containing at least two fields, the set of files and the keywords present in each of the files. And both the actual documents and secure index are encrypted. Both these entities are encrypted using separate keys, which will be discussed later. And you know that searches will be performed on, or searches will be performed using trapdoors or encrypted keywords. Okay, now let us discuss something on the practical implementations of this symmetric searchable encryption schemes. We will start with the trivial solution and then we go on discussing complex solutions. Trivial solution, which is not important solution, which is not the one which we can use to protect data in the cloud. In this particular solution, the user or the client encrypts the data and upload it to the cloud server. How can he perform search operation? He can download all the data into his device, let him decrypt it, let him perform the search now based on the keyword. Now the keyword need not be encrypted because he is having the plain text data. Then re-encrypt and upload. If these steps are followed by the client, what is the fun in using cloud? There is no use of cloud in the entire operation. So this particular solution encounters the following problems. There is a huge communication overhead for the client, isn't it? Whenever he wants to search for the document containing a keyword, he has to download all the documents to his machine. He has to decrypt all the documents, perform search operation, and then re-encrypt and upload once again. Huge communication overhead. Huge computation in his side, in the client side. And as I told you, this scheme essentially doesn't use cloud at all. Actually, what searchable encryption schemes should do? Data should be encrypted and then outsourced by the client. The client has to set search goals, such as what to search and who can search. Also, client should not wait long for search. If the system makes the client to wait for long, then we say the system is inefficient. Client should not download all the data. Client should download whatever the data he requires at that particular moment of time. Client should not compute much. Majority of the computation should be performed in the cloud itself. The actual search operation must be performed in the cloud. Also, actual searchable encryption scheme must provide protection to your data. Protection is required for your source data, search keywords, search results, everything. Now, some of the terminologies are required to understand different searchable encryption schemes. You know something about pseudo-random function. What is a pseudo-random function? It is a function that takes two parameters. Both the parameters are binary strings of certain length. The first parameter is a binary string of length k. Second parameter is a binary string of length n. And the function outputs a binary string of length m. If you consider the first parameter as the key, second parameter as a plain text, some data, the function or the algorithm provides you some other binary string of length m. In some scenarios, in some cases, k, n and m may be same or they may be different also. Can you compare this operation with some stream cipher techniques? You consider AES algorithm, for example. AES algorithm takes two parameters as the inputs. One is the key, another one is the plain text information, and output is the ciphertext. So, if you consider some stream cipher techniques, they are also pseudo-random functions. You can formulate the definition of the function as follows. For all key k belongs to 0, 1 power k, that is the first parameter. And for all x belonging to 0, 1 power n, second parameter, the function with the parameters f of k, x, or you can also read it as fk of x, is efficiently computable. The algorithm gives you the correct output and it terminates without any problem. Your algorithm halts after some computations, giving you the correct output. Now, from the definition, you might have understood that f is identical to or indistinguishable from a random function. The output is a random number. Just like that, you have one more term called pseudo-random permutation. The definition remains same. The term permutation is used here. I will give an analogy or a comparison. You consider the same AES algorithm. The input is the plain text and the key. The output is the permutation of the inputs what you provide. If you look at the output domain, of an AES algorithm, they are permutations of some binary strings. So, the definition for pseudo-random function and pseudo-random permutation remains same, and this is efficiently computable. The function terminates after certain time, giving you a proper result. F is indistinguishable from a random permutation. The operation, this permutation operation is followed by some of the stream ciphers like AES, DES, triple DES, and so on. Now, you might have understood that pseudo-random permutation is a pseudo-random function. You know about pseudo-random generator is a generator or a function which generates pseudo-random numbers. Following are the four properties of a pseudo-random generator. Given a seed as the input, which is the start state, produces a sequence of random numbers or bits. Pseudo-random number generator is an efficient, means can produce many numbers or bits in a short time. It is very fast. It is deterministic, same seeds generate same sequence of numbers or bits. the behavior of the algorithm or the function remains same for the given inputs. Periodic sequence will eventually repeat itself. Examples, stream cipher, as I told you already, linear congruential generator, xi plus 1 is equal to axi plus c mod m, where x0 is the seed, a is the multiplier, c is the increment, and m is the modulus. This is a very popular equation to generate pseudo-random numbers. You know about hash functions. There are two types of hash functions. One type use publicly known key, and other type doesn't use key at all. The hash functions or hash algorithms which do not use key are the popular cryptographic algorithms like SHA-0, 1, 2, 3, MD5, SHA-256, and so on. If you look at some address computation functions to store your elements, there you need to use a key. For example, your input itself becomes a key. These hash functions map arbitrary size bit string to fixed size bit string. For example, you consider SHA-1 algorithm, whatever may be the length of the input, whatever may be the length of the document, output is always 160 bits. It is fixed size. Deterministic, same bit string always results in the same hash. Efficient, quick to compute the hash value. These are some of the requirements for efficient handling of searchable encryption schemes. Okay, now what we will do is, we will see some of the actual searchable encryption schemes proposed by various researchers. We will start with simple schemes or simple techniques. We will understand the problems associated with these schemes and slowly discuss the complex schemes which address the problems associated with the simple schemes. The scheme 1, Song and others proposed 3 schemes, scheme 1, 2, and 3, which will be discussed now. We will see the problems associated with all these 3 techniques, and then we will discuss one more scheme proposed by an author or a researcher called Kurt Mola. So that is the end of our discussion. Okay. Now let us see the proposals proposed by Song and others. In scheme 1, suppose Alice wants to encrypt a document containing a sequence of n-bit words W1, W2, WQ. Let us consider only one document for better understanding. The document consists of Q words. Each word is of length n bit. Let us assume that the length of each word is n bits. Compute bitwise XOR of this plain text containing the words W1, W2 up to WQ with some sequence of stream cipher. This stream cipher might be generated using some stream cipher techniques. You may take DES or AES or whatever, your own algorithm to generate stream cipher bits. You know that one of the simplest stream cipher techniques is using XOR operation. XOR key and your plain text, and the output is the cipher text, which is the stream cipher. You may use any stream cipher technique to produce a stream cipher, and this should have some structure, a definite structure. In the sense, these stream ciphers, whatever you produce from the words W1, W2, etc., must consist of n minus m bits, where n is the total number of bits in the word, isn't it? What is m, we will see soon. So the stream cipher like S1, S2 up to SQ must contain n minus m bits. And these stream ciphers are generated from a stream cipher technique using a key K. Use keyed function f on these n minus m bits that outputs m bits. If you look at the diagram, you will understand better. You have the stream cipher Si for a plain text word Wi. Now, use some function which uses a key Ki, which is other than the key K what you use to generate S. So, apply the function f on S using the key Ki. This is of length m bits. Thus, you have Si with the length n minus m bits, Fki of Si of length m bits. If you concatenate these two entities, you have a word of length n bits. N minus m plus m is nothing but n, which is the length of the given word Wi. In the diagram, you have the plain text Wi. You have the cipher, stream cipher Si, which is produced out of Wi, and its length is n minus m bits. You have Fki of Si of length m bits. Thus, if you concatenate Si and Fki of Si, the total length becomes n bits. You have two entities or two words of length n. You XOR them and produce the final ciphertext. This is what happening in scheme 1. So let us try to formulate. As I told you, you have to concatenate Si and Fki of Si, and this concatenated string is called Ti. Actually, it is the trapdoor. And what is the final ciphertext? Ci is equal to Wi XOR Ti. You know that this final ciphertext is stored in the cloud, and we use this Ti, which is the concatenation of Si and Fki of Si, as the search token to search in the documents, encrypted documents. Now, what is the basic idea behind this? Suppose the client or the user wants to search a word Wj, whether the keyword Wj is present in the encrypted document which is stored in the cloud or not. What the client will do, he will give the server Wj, that is the keyword which is not encrypted here. Please understand, in this scheme, the keyword is not encrypted. That is the problem associated with this scheme. And he will also provide, client will also provide the server all the KIs, starting from K1 to KQ. K1 is for W1, K2 is for W2, and KQ is for WQ. And you know now why these KIs are used. Just look at here, which is used to produce m bits Fki of Si, isn't it? So for every word W, there is a key. So client will provide Ks and Wj, whereby Wj is the searched string. That is the string to be searched in the document. Now, how the server searches? How the server actually performs search operation? It will compute to Ti as Ci XOR Wj. You just look at the formula. Ci is equal to Wi XOR Ti. This is the beauty of XOR operation, as all of you know. Suppose Wi and Ti are the input parameters for the XOR operation. If one parameter is missing, you can generate it using the output Ci. What I mean to say is Ti, suppose Ti is lost, then Ti is equal to Ci XOR Wi. Suppose Wi is lost, Wi is equal to Ci XOR Ti. There is the property of XOR operation, as all of you know. This particular property will be used in searching the document here. Now, Ti is equal to Ci XOR Wi. Server computes Ti as Ci XOR Wj because he has to search, client has to search Wj here. So starting from the first ciphertext stored in the first location, server goes on computing Ti as the ciphertext XOR the keyword to be searched Wj. You know that suppose Wj is equal to W3. You know that keyword or that corresponding ciphertext of Wj is stored in the third location. The key meant for that is K3. Okay. Suppose you start I as 1. You start I from 1. T1 is equal to C1. Hope everyone is comfortable.
Yes, sir. Please continue.
Yeah. So you start from the first location and compute T1 as C1 XOR. Suppose you have to search third encrypted word C3. So you have to generate it from W3, isn't it? So W3 will be given by the client to the server. So this becomes C1 XOR W3. There is no such a ciphertext in the entire document. There is a ciphertext like C3 XOR W3 or T3 is equal to C3 XOR W3. There is no ciphertext like C1 XOR W3 as per the computation we discussed earlier. Okay. So what the server will do, it will compute to Ti as Ci XOR Wj in all the locations of the document using the keys provided by the client. Checks if it is of the form S concatenate Fki of S. Definitely, if W3 you consider with respect to the first location, this formula doesn't hold good. Because if you take S, which is nothing but n minus n bits from Ci XOR Wj and compute Fki of that S, definitely you won't get those m bits as the last m bits of Ci XOR Wj. I hope you understood. If you have any problems, you can ask me at the end. Okay. Now, in this way, the server will recover the data from the document, and if there is a match, it will return the data, the corresponding information, either yes or no, or the document itself to the client. But this requires that Alice reveals all KIs in subset of data she wants to search, isn't it? All the keys of the words are given to the server, and the keyword is passed as the plain text. That shouldn't happen. This is the problem associated with the scheme 1. Now, scheme 2. In the scheme 2, client reveals only the key for Wj, not all the keys. In this scheme, client uses a secret key K and a function G to create KIs. Ki is equal to Gk of Wi. So for all the words W1 to Wk, Ks are produced using the single secret key K and the function G. Client reveals only Wj and the corresponding key Gk of Wj when he wants to search for Wj. All the keys are not provided to the server. If Wj is in the location I, it doesn't reveal other keys where other keys Ki where I is not equal to J. What I mean to say is reveal only the word which you want to search and the corresponding key, but not all the keys. And the remaining things happen in the same way, that is searching by the server. But disadvantage of this scheme is also revealing Wj in the form of plain text. In order to overcome the problems associated with the previous two schemes, Song and others proposed one more scheme, that is scheme 3. This scheme doesn't reveal plain text. Let the plain text be WI, that is, I may vary from 1 to Q if there are Q number of words in the document. You take the plain text WI, some plain text word, and that plain text word will be encrypted using a secret key SK. And this is the input for, this is the one which will be used by the client to pass it to the server now, not the plain text as it is. This scheme is a bit complex. You please try to understand. The encrypted plain text WI is divided into two parts. One is LI and another one is RI, left and right parts. LI is of length n minus m bits and RI is of length m bits. Just like the previous schemes, you have to produce stream cipher using a particular key K for all the words. You know that stream cipher has a length of n minus m bits. You call the stream cipher as SI, and you are going to produce m bits of FKI of SI as in the previous schemes. Now you have two parameters for the XOR operation. Both are of length n bits. So you produce the final cipher text and store it in the cloud. So as I told you, you have Q words. You will be encrypting all these Q words using the secret key SK. Let the encrypted words be XIs. XI is equal to ESK of WI. You will split XI into LI and RI. LI is of length n minus m bits and RI is of length m bits. Use LI to create KI and TI, and then XOR TI with XI to get the cipher text. This is nothing but the explanation of this. How will you produce KIs? KI is equal to GK of LI. K is the secret key which is used for generating all the keys. GK of LI, as in the case of scheme 2. TI is equal to SI concatenate FKI of SI. Now what is the final cipher text? CI is equal to XI XOR TI. To search for WJ, client will give the server XJ and KJ only. Please note, as in the previous schemes, client doesn't give the plain text as it is to the server, but it gives encrypted keyword, encrypted word, which is nothing but XJ to the server. So it gives two parameters, two values, XJ, that is the encrypted WJ, isn't it? And the key KJ, which is generated as KJ is equal to GK of LJ. And these two items will be given to the server for searching, and searching will happen in the similar way. So what the server will do? Server will compute TI first as CI XOR XJ for each I from 1 to Q. Except the location J, TI won't be of the form SI concatenated with the FKJ of SI. Okay? In order to compute SI concatenate FKJ of SI, what the server will do is, it will get n minus m bits from CI XOR XJ, and then it will apply FKJ function for those n minus m bits and produces m bits. If these m bits are same as the last m bits of CI XOR XJ, then it declares the key word is present in the document. If yes, it declares there is a match, otherwise no. Now, you need to know how the client will decrypt the documents provided by the server, written by the server. It is very simple to understand. You know that XI is broken into LI and RI, and this is broken into LI and RI. XI is broken into LI and RI just to allow decryption by someone. Here someone is the user, authenticated user, or a data owner maybe. To compute SI here, as I told you, to compute SI, a client uses the same key, say K dash, either K or K dash, for all the words. Okay, all SIs are produced using a fixed key K dash. SK is the key what you use to encrypt the words W1 to WQ. K is the key which is used to produce KIs, that is GK of LI, isn't it? GK of LI in scheme 3. Now, how the client can recover LI? LI is equal to SI XOR first n minus m bits of CI. You just look at this diagram. What is LI? LI is of length n minus m bits, as you know. The final ciphertext CI is equal to CI is equal to XI XOR TI. Now, how can you recover LI? LI is equal to SI XOR the last n minus m bits, the first n minus m bits of CI, isn't it? Ciphertext is CI. You get the first n minus m bits, XOR it with the SI and get LI back. Okay. Now, in order to produce KIs, you can use LI. Input LI as the input for GK function, G function, and produce KI. Ki is equal to GK of LI. Now, you can use these KIs to recover RIs. RI is equal to, see here, RI is equal to FK of SI XOR it with last m bits of ciphertext CI. Hope you can follow. Last m bits of ciphertext CI is RI. Now client gets got LI and RI, both the parts of XI, that is the encrypted word. Now he will concatenate LI and RI to get XI back. Now he has the shared key from which he can decrypt XI and read the document. There is a disadvantage of this particular technique. Every keywords of every files have to be decrypted, and this particular technique doesn't use the concept of index. Since it doesn't use the concept of index, it has to encrypt as well as decrypt all the documents, and the entire part of the document must be encrypted. This problem can be overcome using one more proposal proposed by Kurt Mola and others. It is a very good scheme as of now, which consumes less time compared to the previous schemes. Let us try to understand the Kurt Mola scheme. These are the notations we use in the entire technique. Let D be the collection of documents which you want to encrypt and store it in the cloud. D is D1, D2 up to Dn. There are n documents in the document collection D. This particular proposal is meant for storing a collection of documents. Okay? It is meant for storing a collection of one or more documents. It works for a single document as well. Let D is equal to a collection of n documents. Let Di be one particular document with the index I. Di is ith document. Let T be a table, a two-dimensional table. A be an array. Let Li be the linked list corresponding to Di. What does it contain? This linked list contains Di, which points to the keywords which are present in Di. For example, you consider D1 here, which points to the keywords present in the document D1. They are cryptography, search, symmetric, encryption, and so on. These are the keywords which are pulled out from the document D1. And these are stored, keywords are stored as a linked list here. Let F be a pseudo-random permutation function. Let G be a pseudo-random generator. Let H be keyed hash function. These notations we use in the scheme. Before understanding the actual scheme, Kurt-Mola scheme, you need to know some of the background information about Kurt-Mola or terminologies, I can say. You need to know two terms. One is the index data structure and another one is the inverted index data structure. What is an index data structure? It is simply referred to as index. As I told you, index is a two-dimensional table containing at least two fields. The first field represents the document ID and the second field represents the keywords present in each document. You just look at the left-hand side of this slide. You have a set of document collection D1 to D4 in this example. So D represents a set of documents D1 to D4. Now below that you have D1 containing the keywords cryptography, search, symmetric, encryption. D2 contains the keywords public, encryption, add, and so on up to D4. Now this information is stored in a two-dimensional table which is called an index. Okay, so this index consists of two fields. One is that D1, D2, D3, D4 are nothing but the document IDs. So these are stored in the first field and the corresponding keywords are stored in the second field of the index data structure. Now if you use the opposite way of storing the data in a table, it is called inverted index data structure. Consider the table in the right hand side of this slide. Once again, you have two fields. One is the content and another one is the locations. Content lists all the keywords or the keywords of all the documents. If you look at the first row, encryption is a keyword which is present in three documents D1, D2, D4. Symmetric is a keyword which is present in two documents D1 and D4 and so on. Altogether, you have 7 keywords in all the documents here. So this is the inverted index and this is in the left hand side, you have the index. In the inverted index, the first field is the search keyword and second field is the document list. Now, the Kurt-Mola scheme uses 5 important probabilistic polynomial time algorithms, PPT. You know what is meant by a probabilistic algorithm? Probabilistic algorithm is the one whose output depends upon a chance. It may not give you the output, same output, all the runs, in all the runs. It gives different outputs in different runs. The output depends upon a chance. You know what is meant by a polynomial time algorithm? So, Kurt-Mola scheme consists of at least 5 algorithms or 5 modules. One is the key generation. The security parameter is K and it outputs a secret key K. Encryption of the document collection D. For this, input is a secret key K and a document collection D, D1 to Dn. Output is a secure index I and a sequence of ciphertexts. Please note here, the output is the secure index I. That means encrypted index. And a sequence of ciphertexts C1, C2, Cn. These are the ciphertexts of the documents D1, D2, Dn. Trapdoor generator. For a particular keyword W, input is a secret key K and a keyword W, and output is a trapdoor T, trapdoor of W using the key K. In simple terms, as I already told you, a trapdoor is nothing but an encrypted keyword. Then the search operation for the documents in the document collection D that contain a keyword W. Input is an encrypted index I for a data collection D and a trapdoor T. So here the input is the encrypted index I and the trapdoor T. Output is a set X of document identifiers. Now you might have understood here, the server, cloud server, doesn't search the actual document, but it searches in the index. It cannot understand the contents of the documents here. Okay, so your documents are safe. Finally, decryption in the client side for an encrypted document DI, assuming that DI is returned by the cloud server to the client for a match in the keyword in the document DI. Input is a secret key K and a ciphertext CI, and output is the actual document DI. So these 5 minimum algorithms are used in the Kurt-Mola scheme. Now let us see some of the implementations. I will explain with some examples about the implementation of Kurt-Mola scheme. Then Ms. Nisha will practically demonstrate how the Kurt-Mola scheme can be implemented. The Kurt-Mola scheme consists of 6 functional entities. In addition to these 5, this also consists of one more module called document preprocessing. Let us see what actually happens in each of the modules. The first module or the first algorithm is key generation. In the key generation module, 2 keys are generated, K1 and K2. K1 is used to index the K1 is used to encrypt the index tables, index data structures, and K2 is used to encrypt the actual documents. Both keys are generated and stored securely at the user device or client device. What is this second module, document preprocessing, which is not listed here, okay? But this is very essential module defined by the Kurt-Mola scheme. This is a module which is used to pull out the keywords from the documents. What are the keywords present in D1? What are the keywords present in D2, etc.? So document preprocessing lists a set of keywords from all the documents. In addition to this, it creates the index data structure and inverted index data structure. Those 2 data structures are also created in this particular module. This is how the data structures, index data structure and inverted index data structures look like with respect to our example. Our example consists of 5 documents, or the document collection set consists of 5 documents, D1, D2, D3, D4, D5, and let there are M keywords in all the documents. W1 to WM be the keywords present in all the documents. Okay. In our example, let M be 10. That means there are 10 keywords in 5 documents. With respect to this example, D1 consists of the keywords W1, W5. D2 consists of the keywords W1, W3, W8, and so on. This index data structure also consists of one more field called content ID. The documents are identified using these content IDs. If you look at the table, the content IDs are nothing but the subscripts what you use to name the document IDs. Content IDs are nothing but the document IDs only. Okay. D1 for the document ID D1, content ID is 1. That is the subscript. D2, 2, D3, 3, and so on. The third field represents the keywords present in each of the documents. The document preprocessing module also constructs the inverted index. Inverted index is nothing but the opposite way of storing the index data structure. There are minimum 2 fields in the inverted index data structure. The first field represents the keywords here. The second field represents the content ID, unlike the index data structure. As I told you, in our example, there are 10 keywords, W1 to W10. If you look at the index data structure, you know that D1 consists of two keywords W1 and W5. That means the first two rows in the inverted index represent the same. W1 is present in, see here, W1 is present in D1, D2 and D5. W2 is present in only D3. Then W5 is present in D1, D3, D1 and D5, these two documents. That's what I am listing in the inverted index. W1 is present in 1 to 5, W2 is present in 3 only, and so on. W5 is present in 1, 3. These are the document IDs. Okay. So, 3 important tasks are done by the document preprocessing module. That is, pulling out or listing the keywords present in all the documents, creation of the index data structure, and creation of the inverted index data structure. The second module is encryption. Encryption of the index data structure and the documents. Both the entities are encrypted here. Key K1 is used to encrypt the inverted index data structure. Key K1 is used to encrypt the inverted index data structure. You just see how the keywords are, how the keywords are encrypted and stored in the encrypted index data structure. For example, if you, in order to encrypt W1, you are taking two parameters, W1 and the document ID in which W1 is present. Then encrypt it using K1, ENC K1 of W1 concatenate 1. And W1 is also present in 2, document 2. That also you encrypt it using K1 and so on. Okay. So W1 is encrypted thrice, isn't it? What is that 3? 3 is the total number of documents in which W1 is present. And the second field represents the content ID. W1 is present in 1, W1 is present in 2, W1 is present in 5, and so on. But W1 is encrypted separately with the separate content IDs. That is very important here to understand the future discussion. And actual document is also encrypted using the key K2. Document ID, that is document 1, is encrypted using K2, document 2 is encrypted using K2, and so on. The same key K2 is used to encrypt all the documents D1 to D5. And after encrypting these documents, they are stored in the cloud. Search token generation. Here, the search token generation is something different. What I mean to say is, don't think that the search token is a single entity for a search keyword. Suppose WQ is the search keyword based on which you have to search one or more documents containing that keyword in the cloud. Don't think that a search token contains only one encrypted WQ. No, it contains collection of entities. What are those collection of entities? Search token T is equal to T1, T2, Tn, where n is the total number of documents. The number of entities in the entire token. So it is a tuple of n entities, isn't it? A search token is a tuple of n entities, where n is the total number of documents. So T is equal to T1, T2, Tn is equal to encrypt the search keyword WQ, concatenate with 1, where 1 is the document ID 1. And this is encrypted using K1. Then WQ, same search keyword with the content ID 2, encrypt it using K1. For encryption, you are using the same key K1. And so on up to nth document. Now, if you look at the search token for a single word, single keyword, the search token is a tuple containing n entities. How is it used while searching? We will see soon. Okay. In our example, there are 5 documents, and hence the search token for any keyword WQ, search token T is equal to T1 to T5. Once computed, the search token is sent to the server to find out the corresponding document containing the search keyword. Now let us see how actually search happens. Given the search token T is equal to T1, T2, T3, T4, T5, it will compare with the encrypted index if any of the values in T matches with the encrypted keyword. Now let us take one particular example. You have the token T1 to T5. Now look at this encrypted index. I have to search which documents contain the keyword W1. I have T1 in the search token, which is ENC of K1 or ENC of W1. The search token in our example, in our discussion is W1 now. Q is equal to 1. Okay. So ENC K1 of W1, 1, W1 concatenate 1, ENC K1 of W1, 2, and so on. ENC K1 of W1 concatenate 5. This is the token what we have now. Now, each T, T1, T2, T5 will be compared with the items what are present in the encrypted index. Now, T1 is, see here, T1 is ENC K1 of W1, 1, W1 concatenate 1. That is the first entity itself. ENC K1 of W1 concatenate 1. That is the first entity itself. So comparison is successful and the server returns the content ID 1 to the client, mentioning that the word W1 is present in the document with the document ID 1. Similarly, in the token, you have T2 as ENC K1 of W1, 2. With respect to that also, the comparison is successful because that entity is there in the encrypted index. So what the cloud server will do, it will return the document ID 2 to the client and so on. Similarly, W1 is present in the document ID, in the document 5 also, but you know that here in the token generation, T5 is equal to ENC K1 of W1 concatenate 5, which is comparable to this entity, ENK1 of W1, 5. That is the third entity here in the encrypted index, and the content ID obtained is 5. So W1 is present in 5 and the content ID is returned to the client. This is how the search token generation and search modules in the Kalt-Molla scheme work. So it outputs the corresponding document IDs or the content IDs which match the search token and then send back the respective documents to the client. Finally, the client or the user will decrypt those documents written by the cloud server because he has the key. He is the owner of these keys K1 and K2. He will use K2 because the documents are encrypted using K2. He will use the key K2 to decrement those documents whose IDs are returned by the cloud server. Okay, this is how the Kalt-Molla scheme works. Now, as the last part of my discussion, as all of you know, no security scheme is 100% free from the attacks. Even Kalt-Molla scheme suffers from two types of attacks. One is the chosen ciphertext attack and another one is the keyword guessing attack. In the chosen ciphertext or chosen keyword attack, it is just like your chosen ciphertext attack in the normal cryptography. Okay, what the adversary or the attacker will do, he will take one particular keyword, encrypted keyword from the document, and then he has the capability to make the victim or the client here who is possessing the secret key to decrypt it and send that plain text word to the adversary or the attacker. So this is how the attack happens on this particular scheme. So to protect the confidentiality of the keyword in the encrypted ciphertext, the scheme needs to be secured under chosen keyword attack. If the encrypted keyword is available to an attacker may be cloud service provider himself, isn't it? As I told you in the beginning of my session, attacker may be the cloud service provider. He may be given some chance or provision to get a word, encrypted word from the document, and somehow he may succeed in getting a plain text equivalent to that ciphertext from the client. So if he succeeds in doing this particular task, then definitely he succeeds in obtaining the key by trial and error method or other techniques. With a high-end machine, he can do anything. Once he deduces the key, then definitely he can obtain the entire document in the plain text form. Dan Boneh and others have proposed one particular scheme. Their scheme doesn't allow the cloud server to know anything about the encrypted ciphertext. Even the trapdoor, if the trapdoor or the encrypted keyword is not known to the attacker, then the entire document collection can be kept secret, isn't it? Confidential. But still, this scheme doesn't give 100% protection. What the attacker or the adversary can do is he can guess some keyword and ciphertext pairs. Okay, this, what I mean to say, the another type of attack, that is keyword guessing attack, cannot be solved even with the proposal proposed by Dan Boneh and others. In the keyword guessing attack, what actually happens is, if the keyword number of keywords is very small, if there are limited number of keywords, what the attacker may do is he will create a list of keywords and he will generate the equivalent ciphertext. So he will be having a table of plain text and ciphertext. Then he will compare. Suppose somehow he understands or come to know a trapdoor in the document collection, he will compare the trapdoor with the table whatever he has created earlier with the guessed plain text and ciphertext. If there is a match between the trapdoor whatever he has got from the document list and the ciphertext whatever he has produced himself, then with that as the hint, he can produce the key and apply for the entire document. In this way, the keyword guessing attack happens on the Kurt-Moller scheme. So my final conclusion is, no security system is free, 100% free from the security attacks. Even the schemes, whatever, even the proposals, whatever we discussed here are having their own loopholes, and attacker or adversary can attack the systems. So this is end of my presentation. Now I request Ms. Nisha to continue if the time permits. Otherwise, she may have.
Shall we start at 2 o'clock?
Yeah, no problem, no problem.
No problem.
Sure.
We'll have a half an hour lunch break.
Yeah, sure. So we, Ms. Nisha will join after the lunch then. Thank you very much.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable talk.
Yeah. Thank you.